Have you ever met a person whose business is first defined by a mathematical formula? Wow, how powerful is that? That's the first thing I saw when I visited AFRICAPITAL's website. And I was interested, I was curious to interview Mr. Burak Büyüksaraç. Welcome, Mr. Burak.
Thank you, happy to be here.
Looking in hindsight, back to your formative years, when Mr. Burak was a young boy, now that you are a leader, what do you think are the things that shaped you into the person that you are now?
I'll be honest with you, I've never thought about it, but when I'm looking at back at those years, I can see now that my parents got divorced when I was pretty young. I think I was 11 or 12 years old. My sister was 6 years old. I can say that maybe because of that and also some other reasons, I was always a very individual person from the young age. And my parents also let me do things that the way I'm doing. So maybe compared to my peers, I've started going out much earlier. I started doing things much earlier. I started going to holidays during summer holidays alone many years before than my friends. All that kind of built me up and maybe prepared me in a different manner.
That's very, very interesting to know that you started going to summer holidays independently at a young age compared to your peers, but also your parents letting you do things independently. What is the memorable moment to you, the day that you were let to do something on your own and it was something very building to your character?
I was always interested in nature. So I was, from young age, I was part of these outdoor clubs at the school and also outside of the school. Pretty much every weekend we would go somewhere by bus with those clubs, climb mountains, do trekkings or camping. I think being in nature, facing those challenges, putting up your tent, sleeping in a sleeping bag, putting up your campfire, having a limited amount of food and water, and all that also, I think, building your character. And until today, that is where I enjoy the most, mainly in the nature, basically.
And how was your school life? Let's say secondary school, university?
So from secondary school and high school, I received a French education. So I was in a French school in Turkey. I was one of the most terrible students that you could see. Like literally, I wouldn't even take books to school. But somehow I will just manage to go to the next year. But I was really a terrible student. Like I would never do any homeworks, nothing. Even when the college time came, where in Turkey you need to go through exams, and I knew that if I go through those exams, I wouldn't get anywhere. But luckily, I was talented in arts, in drawing and all that. So I knew that from the young age that if I will go to a college, that will be not by through exams and by my curriculum, by my notes, but mostly through talent. So I only applied for universities who are accepting students with talent. So, arts, plastical arts, beaux-arts, and so forth. And then I went to France. So that's where I had my studies, which is plastical arts. Basically, in French is art plastique, which is translated to kind of beaux-arts in English. So, and the reason, as I said, because that was the easiest thing to do for me. But again, when I reached there, I find out that because I was only expecting, drawing things, doing, taking photographs and all that. But there was lots of theory as well, history of art, aesthetics and all that, which I hated. But yeah, I was never a good student.
Listening to you, I have noticed a very interesting contrast. you were an independent person who your parents trusted you to take activities on your own and to be daring, go to the field and all that. So listening from that, one would say that this person is going to be an extremely responsible person at school when they go to secondary school. But when you go to secondary school, you're telling us you were not that much of a good student, as we would describe it, a good student. One key thing I've picked here is that you are also a good person at doing like some sort of analysis, and maybe that's helping you in your business as well, because you looked at your strength, you looked at your weaknesses, and then you understood how to leverage on your strength more and leave your weaknesses so that you can get to uni.
Well, I was always a people's person. Like from my teacher's perspective, I was one of their favorite students always, even though I was the worst student, but they always liked me. So I always maintained that relationship. So I remember, for example, during the exams, like I had a history teacher which I loved so much, and again, like most of my other courses, I was also terrible at that. So during the exams, instead of, because I didn't know the answers, I would just write notes to my teacher. Like I would say things like, "I'm sorry, don't get upset with me. Next time I will work on better." And it's a funny thing to write on an exam paper, but they would love that. When they would laugh at. So I would always maintain my relationships, and I would do just enough to go for the next year. So I never repeated any classes or any year.
You have made me recollect of my times back in Form 1. So this, I think others call it junior secondary school.
Yeah, we have a different format.
Yes.
Turkey, yeah.
So when I was in Form 1, I had come from a Swahili-speaking school. And I went to, in Form 1, you must speak English and all exams are in English. So I wouldn't know how to write some things in English. And then I would write it in Kiswahili, put in brackets, translate to English. So basically, I'm telling the teacher, translate to English. So specifically, I remember I couldn't remember what slaves were in history exam, and I wrote watumwa, bracket, translate to English. So it's very interesting to hear that.
So we had a similar approach.
Yeah, similar approach. How did you get to your first job? And how did your professional life then unfold from there?
To be honest, I think one of the reasons why I didn't really push my academic life, I always knew kind of that I would always work with my family, because my family had a family business. And that's what happened. During university, actually, I started working with that company, and basically I was not going to the school anymore. I was just busy with that family business.
What was your role?
I started as sales. I was always kind of good at sales, selling things. Then that became marketing, then sales and marketing. It was a mid-sized corporate, so there was different levels. Mm-hmm. So I went through all those levels. Because I could speak 2 foreign languages, I was also dealing with foreign affairs, all the foreign clients. So for a few years, it continued like that. Then we got into mining business, and I also got involved in mining. So that's how I came to Tanzania, actually, because in 2010, we decided to invest in mining sector in Tanzania. Mm-hmm. So I came as a managing director of that company. And just a year after, we also started business in DRC Congo. So I ran those 2 companies for 5 years. So from 2010 till 2015, and then as a family office, as a family business, we didn't manage to go to the second generation, and things didn't go well, and we failed basically, and then we split up. After 5 years in Tanzania, I had a chance to go back to Turkey, or during that time also I had my own business in Sharjah, Dubai, mm-hmm. With a Tanzanian friend of mine. So that business was also doing well. So I could go to Dubai. But after 5 years here, I made a good network. I learned how to do business here. And in Tanzania, I always say to everyone, if you want to do anything here, you need to spend at least 2 years just to learn the ecosystem, just to learn the local dynamics and parameters. So I didn't want to waste all that, and I decided to stay here. I always knew that Africa is the future anyway, so that's how I stayed, and I started my own businesses.
Your family business used to be one of the leading Turkish investment companies.
Yeah, that time it was the largest investment in Katavi region. That's where we were mining, Mupanda, Katavi. Not only in mining, but in any sector. So that time we invested $27 million into that business. Another $4 million for a packaging business in Dar es Salaam, EPZA, in EPZA. Another $2 million in DRC. So yeah, that time, especially, I'm talking about 2010, 11, 12, it was a significant investment.
Looking back, your family business, you saw it fail, but did you get to see it being established?
Yeah, I've seen it growing from a young age because I was always, like during summer holidays, other holidays, I was always, visiting the factory, the office. So I kind of spend a lot of time when I'm growing there. So I see its growth. But the time I joined, that was the time when the real growth was happening. So I've seen that, but I've also seen how it went down.
Now that you stepped directly from your family business, which was failing, that was 2015, or which had failed,
yes.
And then you started your own businesses here in Tanzania. Yeah. What were the lessons that you learned from that business that you would like anyone else to learn, and those lessons are helping you in your current business?
I learned a lot, and I always tell myself, I think I learned more mistakes than the good stuff, and I always try to implement that. For example, that our family business was not very good at in terms of financials. I'm not talking about the revenue or income, but taking the right decisions financially, making the right investments. That's what happened. That's why we failed in Tanzania, for example. We spent a lot of money, but without proper feasibility analysis, without proper financial projections in place. So I've lived through all that, and now whatever I do, I always try to be very careful on that regard.
You have some interesting, unique businesses, I would say, like the Maasai watches and the Lady Askari. And I'm curious at how you look at opportunities, because we have used Maasais as guards, but I've not seen anyone who has looked at it as a business, and it's doing quite well.
When I was in mining, so we were mining in Mupanda, Katavi. It's quite far. And it was a very big site, and we had lots of licenses. And so that time I would, as the GM of the company, I would hire Maasai guards. We had, I think, like 36 Maasais in all sites. They were very good. They were good guards. But there was always lots of issues. There was language issues. Of course, pretty much none of them speaks English. There are no supervisors to talk to. At the end of the month, when we are paying the salaries, when you pay 36 people, it's quite a number of salary, but they are not able to provide me any supporting document or receipts or invoices. It's not a company, they are individuals. And I always thought that time, like, these guys are very good, but I wish they were under a corporate structure where there was an issue. I could call their supervisor, their manager. At the end of the month, the company could give me an invoice, so I could use that as an expense, and so forth. Like I suffered that myself. So years later, I said, you know what, let me do it myself. And I was always close with Maasai community. I always use Maasais in all my businesses. So that's how Maasai Watchers started. And since it started, everybody's telling me the same thing. Like they've been there and they've been doing this, but nobody thought of formalizing them. And you, as a Turkish, a foreigner coming to Tanzania, you saw that opportunity. And I tell them, it's not just because I was able to see that opportunity, it's because exactly because I'm a foreigner. I have a different perspective. If you as a Tanzanian, if you would come to my hometown to Turkey in Ankara, where I lived for many years, so you come there, you will have a different eye, you will have a different perspective. You might see something where a resident of Ankara living there for the last 40 years was not able to see. And with that perspective, you might start a new business and all the locals would look at you like, this Tanzanian girl came here and we've been living all our life here and we didn't even think about this. You might think because you bring that different perspective. But also, of course, it's not just that. You need to be open. You need to be able to see those opportunities as well. So that's how it started. Now we have 3 different brands, all 3 distinctive brands under our security company. So first is Maasai Watchers. Second is Lion Shield, which is regular guards, but Lady Askari. Lady Askari is regular guards also, but all women. So all guards are women, which is a first also in Tanzania, like Maasai Watchers. That was the first, and Lady Askari is the first. And how did that happen is, again, through experience. Because in Maasai Watchers, we also use Maasai women guards. And in Lion Shield, we also use women guards. And I'll tell you, women guards are the best.
Wow.
Yeah, women guards are the best. Men, they sleep, they come to work late, they leave early, they disappear without notice, they have all type of undisciplinary actions. And I've been doing this business for many years. I'm telling you that's the fact. Where women, they are very disciplined. They have a sense of responsibility against their family, against their children. Their job is important to them. They don't risk it. They do everything right.
You have now invested in capital markets, which requires to invest money, taking very huge risks for potential future exits in that particular business. And we see you established this business in 2024. Actually, it is your latest in your business portfolio. Why?
We incorporated AFRICAPITAL in February last year, 2024. So when I started doing my own businesses, we started with our travel agency, and we still run that company. It's been 10 years now. Later on, it became a tour operator. And in 2016, we also started a consultancy business. So that consultancy business also is going on. So since 2016, we are providing feasibility studies and market research to foreign investors coming to Tanzania, in some cases to other East African countries. So, and over the years, I had hundreds of clients where we provided feasibility studies and market research. That is the only 2 things we do in that company. We don't do anything else, just feasibility studies and market research. So, and imagine providing this service across many different sectors for hundreds of different clients. Really gave me a good understanding and general knowledge about many different sectors in Tanzania and in East Africa in general. Over the years, I started seeing the real potential of capital markets in Tanzania, because I was also very closely following Kenya, for example. Capital markets is much more established in Kenya than Tanzania, and it's been there for many years, maybe 15, 20 years now. When you look at Nairobi, you have maybe 40 private equity and venture capital businesses and lots of funds operating out of Kenya. Where in Tanzania, even now, there's a handful of companies. But I always knew that when the time comes, the real potential will be in Tanzania, because it's a no-brainer. when you look at the demographics, the size of the country, the natural resources, the youth population, the fast-growing population, the market size, the market opportunities. So all these key factors for the potential in the capital markets.
I was looking at the Tanzania Startup Ecosystem Status Report 2024, and it shows that in venture capital for startup fundraising, South Africa last year got $744 million US dollars, followed by Kenya, $649 million US dollars, and then Nigeria, 434, Egypt, 401 million US dollars, and then Tanzania, 53 million. So yours is a long shot, looking at the potential that the country has in the future, considering its history and where it is going. Would you mind going into details of what are the particular potentials that you see in Tanzania, why you selected Tanzania?
First of all, I didn't necessarily select Tanzania because I was already in Tanzania, so I was living here. It would have been difficult for me to move to another African country just because the opportunities there in the capital markets are better than Tanzania. No, currently, yes, they are doing better. But again, I'm looking for mid and long term. In the long term, so you said around 50 million, right?
Yeah.
That 50 million, we reached there in the last few years only, where South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, Rwanda, they've been there for a long time. So compare when you put that in a ratio of maybe 15, 20 years to 500, 400 million, and 2-3 years to 50 million, that's a massive jump. And that will double or triple every year, especially in the next few years. So therefore, I don't see that as really a long run. It will be shorter than you'd expect.
What are the unexplored and underexplored opportunities that if we tap into them as a country, we can boost the capital markets business?
So, foreign investors, foreigners in general, when they look at Africa, they see lots of problems, lots of issues, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't realize that is exactly why this is the place to be. If there are lots of issues, there are lots of problems, that is the best place for entrepreneurs, because it means that there is a problem to be solved, right? There's a problem to solve. And that's where the market opportunities lies. So if everything is perfect, if there's no problem to solve, there's no room for growth for entrepreneurs. Simply is that. So I wish that people could approach from that perspective. So, and when you put that in Tanzania context, fast-growing population, massive land size, and unlimited natural resources, so you combine those. I mean, Tanzania is by far better than literally anywhere else in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of opportunities.
You spoke about the problems and challenges to be solved. Where there are many problems, that means that so many solutions have to be innovated. Looking into the reports from the past 2 years, last year more funding in Tanzania went to fintech, and the other year it went to health tech. Does it mean that these are the biggest challenges we have? Or it means that the solutions that have been innovated attract more funding? And if that's so, how can others who are innovating or coming up with other solutions attract investors and attract funders?
First of all, in the VC and startup ecosystem, anything to do with tech is a hotcake right now. Mm-hmm. Whether it's fintech, edutech, health tech, agri-tech, whatever. So investors like that, right? So that's on one side. But secondly, especially when we are talking about Tanzania, Tanzania is very friendly with digital ecosystem. People are using social media very heavily. The population is very young. Tanzania and Kenya is leading on the mobile money, not only in Africa but anywhere in the world. So people are familiar with that ecosystem, whether they know that they are familiar or not. Even people in upcountry, everybody is using M-Pesa and everybody is using social media. So that creates an environment where this tech businesses or any business with the extension of tech is actually it's easier to penetrate in this market than other markets. So the way I see it, that's one of the main reasons why those sectors are growing faster compared to others.
Talking about tech, I've also looked into global statistics where we see that global venture funding for the year 2024, there was approximately 334 billion US dollars, whereby 100 billion went into AI. But when you come to look into Africa, we raised about 3.2 billion on startup, 2.2 went into equity, and 1 billion went into debt funding. But looking at what attracted in the area of fintech, the amount that went into fintech was about 1.3 billion equity funding. Looking at the lion's share, I feel like tech in Africa is not receiving much funding. What could we do to attract more funding in Africa?
I think it's not what we could do. It's an organic process. Whatever we do, that will come in phases. When you look at Asia, again, as we discussed when we were comparing Tanzania and Kenya and so forth, those guys, they were doing that for the last 30, 40 years, right? Mm-hmm. And they reached a point where accessing to finance and also bringing finance is much, much easier, much faster. Where when you look at the African continent, the history of that, the track record of that, is not that old. So therefore, it will come. It's not that whatever we do or we don't, things will happen organically because we don't have any other option. We don't have a choice.
With your experience working with local companies, let's say startups and established businesses, how many are incorporating AI, looking that tech attracts more money than other areas? How many are now looking into AI as a serious business?
Unfortunately, none of the established businesses in our pipeline, as far as I know, have heavily incorporated AI into their businesses. There are AI developing technology companies. That's another subject, of course. But when we are talking about existing businesses, I don't see many. With AI, I think it will reach a point where the open source providers such as ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and all will come to a point where you will be able to use those platforms and integrate them into your business like a software that you will develop for your own company. But I think everybody can agree that whether we like it or not, there is no running away from it.
We are in for this.
Yes.
There's no running away.
Yes, 100%.
So talking about capital markets, we might have viewers or listeners who would like to understand more. What are capital markets?
Capital markets is a very general term for many different sectors, actually. So we are more into private equity and venture capital. Mm-hmm. But when you say capital market, it's mostly actually people think about stock exchanges. If we are talking about Tanzania, that will be the Salaam Stock Exchange. But we categorize all private equity, venture capital ecosystem, also part of that capital markets, because at the end, PE and VC is also looking for an exit. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, the best exit strategy is through IPOs, meaning by listing that company in a stock exchange in the country that you are or elsewhere.
One might want to understand what IPOs are.
IPO is the initial public offering. If a company constantly grows and it reaches a point where they will be able to bring public as shareholders into that company, they need to go to a stock exchange and list themselves and open their shares for public. So that's what IPO is. So when we say IPO, basically it's being listed in that particular stock exchange.
Why did you decide to focus on only the two, private equity and venture capital, focusing on startups and also established businesses?
It's because of the challenges to accessing to capital in Tanzania and also in many other African countries. So unfortunately, the financial system, particularly in Tanzania, it's based on basically the banks, the commercial banks. The whole system is based on collateral. So basically, in developed economies, when you look at the commercial banks, when you go to a commercial bank with a project, so first they would look at your feasibility studies, your projections, your financial projections, your team, your product, your market entry, your market potential, and all that. That will come first. And in many cases, if your project is so good and if you have a very strong feasibility study, you might not even need to provide a collateral or a very small collateral maybe. Oh. Where here is vice versa.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the banks, on the paper, yes, they are looking at your feasibilities, projections, and all that, but we all know that all they want to see is collateral. And the collateral or securities or guarantees, whatever you're going to call it, that you are bringing on the table should cover actually more than the loan amount itself. So if you are getting a $100,000 loan, usually the ratio is you need to cover it 125%, 120 to 125%. So basically for a $100,000 loan, you need to provide a collateral of worth of $125,000. So imagine now how startups, two young kids just out of college, they have a very good idea and they need $50,000 or $20,000. How they can give that collateral to the bank? There is no way. Therefore, they are not able to access to that local capital. So that's why private equity and venture capital is a very good alternative for them. Private equity for more established companies, they don't need to provide a collateral. We find an equity investor for them, and then everyone is happy. Same for VC. Venture capital is mostly focusing on startups and early stage companies. Same applies. So basically, what pushed me to get into that is because of that challenge, that accessing to finance challenge.
It's interesting looking at these two different worlds where one can look at a very good definitive study and give you capital, and then another one focuses on collateral. Do foreign investors face any challenges to navigate through our market where they focus on collateral? I understand that's the problem you're solving, but when you bring in foreign investors, do they understand the local context?
They do, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not really blaming the system because they have their own reasons also. They need to be more conservative. This is a relatively smaller economy. It's a growing economy, and the financial sector is the backbone of any economy. Of course, they need to be more careful, maybe than US, Australia, Japan, or UK, right? Because those markets been there for hundreds of years. Very established markets, very established financial sectors. It's not the same for Tanzania. Of course, they need to protect their assets, their banks. But all I'm saying is they can start being a little bit more flexible. Now, coming back to your question, for foreigners to navigate in that ecosystem, yes, of course, it is a challenge, but anybody anybody who's operating in this ecosystem, in the investment ecosystem, they know about the financial world. So it wouldn't be a surprise to them.
What has been the magnitude of your impact since last year, February, when you established AFRICAPITAL, to this moment? And what are your perspectives?
You know, in our business, closing deals takes a long time for both private equity and venture capital. And I can tell you that the average timeline is around 9 months, at least for Tanzania, closing any deals. You know, the time that you start engaging with the company, in many cases, the due diligence stage will take long. In also many cases, those companies will not be very compliant with the regulations. So you need to fix all that before you can do anything. So you need to make sure that they have an updated business license, they have the tax clearance, they have all the documents in place, they have a good feasibility study, good projections, they have a good pitch deck, they have a good team. I mean, in many cases, we need to get involved with them from the beginning until what we call it being investment ready. They need to become investment ready first so that we can take them out to the market and look for potential investors. So that's a long process. You start engaging with the potential investors, and it doesn't mean that you will find someone right away. That can also take months.
You're explaining about the process that you go through to secure the deals, but I picked what I translated to be a challenge, whereby you have to make these investments investor ready. How can we make the scenario better, that they know what to do to become investor ready before come to a company like yours, so that the process is simplified and is even more fast-tracked?
There are a lot of things they can do. They don't need anyone. I tell this in all the startup events or VC events that I'm attending. The information is available. You know, information is available online. They can watch, for example, how to prepare a nice pitch deck, right? They can ask this question in Google. They can ask this question in ChatGPT or other AIs, and those platforms will give them everything they need. If they want something more visual, they can go to YouTube and they can search how to prepare a nice pitch deck. Not only that, even for particular sectors, how to prepare a nice pitch deck for tourism, for education, for agriculture, whatever. And they will find 100 different videos. All they have to do is just to sit, watch, understand, take notes, and start building that knowledge. I mean, even myself, I do that pretty much every day. I didn't know much about what we are talking about since like few years ago. The best person they can depend on is themselves. So the information is available. All they have to do is just search for it and implement it. So that's how they can start. This is one, because some of them, as you said, they are depending on third entities. So they think that, okay, they will come to AFRICAPITAL and we will prepare everything for them. We are a business. If we do that, we have to charge also. And I tell them, like, I don't need that, and you don't need to pay me also. You can use those funds for something else. I would rather raise capital for you, and I will get my fees out of that capital that I raised. I will feel better with that. I don't want to charge you at the beginning.
Yeah, that sounds pretty much basic, and seems like we have to create more awareness for these people to know that it's just simple information, simple knowledge that you need to know so that you can get yourself investor ready. If there are established companies now looking forward to attracting investors and they don't know where to start from, what would you advise them? First
of all, they need to know what they need. We cannot tell them what they need. So let's say they need $10 million, right, for growth, or if it's a manufacturing company to buy new assets, new machineries, land, factory, whatever. So they need to know if they need that capital in terms of debt, or they prefer equity, or they prefer a blended option, like a mixture of debt and equity.
Okay.
First, they need to know that themselves. If we tell them what they need, that will be a bad start. So that's one. Second, okay, compared to startups, yes, they need to spend some money at the beginning. So if you wanna access to large amount of finance, unfortunately, you need to spend some money. And where you can spend that money is on your pitch deck, on your financials, on your projections. So, like the example I've given you, if you go to one of the big fours and ask them to prepare your feasibility studies, they might do a good job or not. It doesn't matter. But once the investors see that company's logo on top of the feasibility study, that will install confidence. So that is money worth to spend. And in most cases, it will increase their chances to get that investment by tenfold.
I believe that there are many companies that are looking into engaging with your company to seek investors. I also believe it might not be true that you don't take just any other company. What do you consider before saying that I will work with this company and that company?
First thing we look is the ticket size, because that is the most important criteria for us. If ticket size is not aligning with our criteria, that we cannot do that. And our ticket size starts from $200,000, meaning that we can only raise minimum $200,000 for that business. If a company needs less than that, it is not for us. The second is we look at the owners. Tanzania, even though it's a big country, the business ecosystem is small. Your name, your reputation is really important here. So we look at the people who are the owners. What is the feedback about them in the market? Are they good people or are they crooks? If we find out that they are crooks or they don't have a good name, if they have a bad reputation, we will stay away. When we look at an application, we can immediately spot the red flags as well as the potential in that application, in that business. If we see that, for example, a company needs $500,000, right? And when you look at the numbers, the assets, the projections, the sales, the revenue, and everything, it makes sense that they need $500,000. But if the same company comes and tells me that they need $2 million, so that's a red flag, because asking more than what you need, in many cases, those are kind of people that they are trying to get that money, and if they they will end up buying Land Cruisers and not invest in their businesses. Then, of course, we look for good companies. If it's a startup, they should offer something new, or if it's an existing service, within that delivery, they should be offering something different than different than their peers. So we are looking for that genuine touch. So what is different? What they are bringing, or are they bringing something like 100 different other companies are also doing? So with startups, we look for that creativity, that genuinity.
But what about those people whose names don't have much visibility? Their reputation is not bad and probably is good, but they have a good business, but they're not known. What happens?
We'll proceed unless we see a red flag. So let's see, we meet someone, he looks genuine, okay, but we don't hear much about him in the market, people don't know him. Unless we see a red flag, one of those red flags which I mentioned, we would proceed. But if we see a red flag, then we will investigate, we will dig deep. And the reason why we are doing that, because in our line of business, usually there are advanced charges. So some companies, they call it DD charges, due diligence charges. Some companies call them engagement fees, whatever. So, for example, we call it engagement fees. But in this market, because this ecosystem is still very new and growing, it is very difficult to charge advance fees to people, to companies. They are already in need of money. They are already in need of funds. And on top of that, a company is charging them to prepare their pitch deck, to do their due diligence. In 9 out of 10, they are not able to pay that, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, because we are not charging and we are taking that risk and we are spending a lot of hours during that due diligence and engagement stage, we need to be also careful on who we are working with. That's why all those things that I said, the background checks, the red flags, we are very careful with those.
Looking at the Government of Tanzania 2050 vision, we see that the government has aspiration to strengthen the public-private partnership, but also the capital markets. It has also recognized startup businesses, and it's looking into making sure that the ecosystem is strengthened to bring forth better results than what we have now. So I have seen your company entering into partnerships with other ecosystem players, specifically some government entities. What are the plans?
Sure. I think Tanzanian government is doing a great job on that. They are very proactive. For example, in the capital markets, the regulatory board is CMSA, Capital Markets and Securities Authority.
Yeah.
You might know they recently come up with a new regulatory framework.
Mm-hmm.
And the last year, when they were preparing that framework, they reached out to us, and after a few engagements, they shared the draft regulations with me, and they asked for me to go through and give my comments. That was such a surprising thing, a government office sharing a draft regulation with an individual, and on top of that with a foreigner. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I mean, that tells you a lot how proactive they are, how forward-looking they are. And we have submitted our comments, and they took those comments into consideration. So that was amazing. Regarding our collaborations, we signed our first MOU with TIC, with Tanzania Investment Center last year. TIC was also quite proactive. We signed an MOU. Basically, the idea of that MOU is to provide access to capital to the companies under TIC's portfolio, mm-hmm. As an alternative capital source than local conventional banking, which is, again, private equity. And then shortly after that, we signed another MOU with TPSF. Although TPSF is like a semi-government, Tanzania Private Sector Federation. That time it was foundation, now it's federation. Similar MOU, the one that we signed with TIC, but more focusing on the SMEs and MSMEs. And as you said, just a few weeks ago, we signed with the Salaam Stock Exchange, which was the most important one for us. Not that TIC and TPSF was equally important, but because we are operating in capital markets, and the Salaam Stock Exchange is a capital markets player, the leading player. Yeah. For us to sign an MOU with them was extremely important. The aim of that MOU is in two phases. The one is to find companies, established companies in Tanzania with the potential of being listed in the Salaam Stock Exchange, mm-hmm. and to prepare them to be IPO ready. So that's number one. And the second is to promote the Salaam Stock Exchange and capital markets in general in Tanzania to the foreign investors. They have tremendous potential, good returns, amazing future. So we will promote those aspects also to the foreign investors. For
so many years, stakeholders in different sectors have complained about not being engaged in these processes, and that as a result, the policies or regulations or the tools that are developed sometimes do not really serve the demand, or they contradict with some areas in one way or another. So I like this approach. I also saw it in one of the reports where other stakeholders were saying that they were engaged in this particular regulation. So this shows that when we talk about building sustainably building the nation sustainably, this is how it should start. Looking at foreign investors when they come to invest in Tanzania, let's say in the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange or in other opportunities, they come from a completely different environment, and they might be looking at things from regulations point of view, from the European or American or any other first world point of view. For instance, issues like environmental, social and governance, the whole sustainability aspect. Looking into that and other areas, what would you like a foreign investor to understand before they come to invest here?
I think Tanzania is doing a good job overall in that regard, in terms of compliance, ESG, even more than many other countries, especially when it comes to women empowerment, youth empowerment, gender equality. Recently with the environmental matters, carbon credits, it is really in government's agenda, and government is really pushing for it. I think, as I said, Tanzania is already somewhere higher than the other neighboring countries and many other countries in the continent. So from that perspective, I think foreign investors wouldn't be much disappointed with what they will see. Maybe it's not at the level in Europe or in other developed economies, but compared to our peers, I think Tanzania is doing a pretty good job.
When you talk about startups, these are businesses that are looking into growing, scaling up. But when we look at the statistics, 66% until last year of the startups were still at an early stage. Many of them were established last year, so it makes sense to be at an early stage. For those that were at growth stage, we are only 25%. And product market fit was 7%. What are the characteristics of startups that you have seen are faring well compared to those that are remaining dormant, or they are not growing, or probably they are dying?
Not only in Tanzania or in Africa, anywhere in the world, statistically speaking, out of 5 startups, 3 or 4 will fail. Mm-hmm. So 1 or 2 will succeed. So failing startups is it's not new, and it's not something for Tanzania only. It is what it is. The way I see it, the successful startups have one thing in common, whether they are in fintech, in agriculture, in manufacturing, whatever it is. They have a good understanding of local dynamics, starting from the source. So, for example, a young guy setting up a system of selling eggs and distributing them through bodas in a rural area is because he sees the problem, he understands, and he knows his local dynamics, he knows his people, he knows his geography, he understands everything, the landscape, the whole ecosystem, and he creates such a solution to solve that particular issue and to cater that ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Whether if it's a very small company or a larger company, whatever. But as long as they solve that local problem and they understand that local dynamics, those are the ones who are becoming successful. There are ones that they see something in US or in UK and it's very successful, and they immediately think that, I should do the same here and it will work. It will not work.
Yeah, makes sense. And for, let's say, back to the DSC MOU. Let's say I'm company A, and I think I have a potential to be listed to the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange in the near future. What do I need to do?
First of all, before you think that you are a good candidate, there are lots of criteria that you need to comply with. Mm-hmm. You need to be profitable for the last 3 years. You need to have absolute perfect compliance with your regulatory board and with other government entities, no tax liabilities, this and that, and you need to have certain market share and all that. So if all those are in place, then on the paper, if you are a eligible candidate, then the next thing is, for me, I will come back to the same point. What I would look at, if I were someone, a company, an investor, whether individual or institutional, sitting outside of Tanzania, would I invest in that company? What they are doing, what they are offering, what is that they are doing different than the others? What is the potential, what is the future, what they are promising in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So if you can create that interest, not only from local investors, but also from foreign investors, I think that is the way to go. Then that will be a good company to be listed.
If you were to say one advice that you really wish to give to either investors or entrepreneurs, probably you give it out unsolicited, but you are never asked for it. What is it?
To the investees, the companies, they should be genuine. I mean, they should not come up with something where 100, 1,000, 10,000 other people are doing. So they should either do something else, something new, or if they are bringing something which 10,000 other people are doing, they should do better than all those 10,000. So that is the most important thing in any business. Either you create something new or you do better than others. To the investors, especially to the foreign investors, I would tell them to be more flexible when it comes to Africa. Because in many cases, they are trying to implement their selection criteria when it comes to investments, which is applying somewhere in Europe, let's say. They have these rules and regulations and selection criteria and all the boxes that they need to tick in Switzerland. So they are bringing the same thing to Tanzania or elsewhere in Africa, and they are expecting that all those boxes should be ticked also here. They won't be ticked. Here is different. Here the dynamics are different. You need to create a complete, separate investment selection criteria for this market. Because if you try to implement that, it won't work.
So to close the podcast, I would like you to share a nugget. How do you nurture your mind space to make sure that you always remain a sharp thinker? And how do you also make sure that you keep your mind space secure? Because we understand there is a lot of information, there is a lot of distraction sometimes, and every person has a different way to keep themselves grounded. How do you do that, and how does it help you?
I would say, first of all, I don't allow negative things which happening in my life to affect me, to affect my mindset, to affect my mentality, or to reflect those negativity around the people that are around me, whether it's my family, my friends. That is one aspect that I can proudly say that I'm proud of it. I would never allow that. Whatever bad things is happening, whether it's in my business or in my life, I will still try to maintain my composure. I think that is important to not have up and downs all the time. I have that concept of routine and discipline in my life, that everything that I do, I go to office at the same time, I leave during certain time, I don't know, I reply my emails quickly, I respond to people's messages, I don't leave anything unanswered. You know, those small things, when you add them up, I think it creates some sort of routine or discipline in your entire life. And I think that is important thing to have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Burak.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was
pleasure.
Quite an interesting discussion.